What's up, guys? Africa James here. Did you ever wonder what it's like to step out of your house and enter this completely new world that's just going to blast your mind as a foreigner, as a non African here in Africa? What does it feel like? Well, first of all, it depends when you're going to go out. The number one biggest challenge that I face when I go out in the afternoon is hands down, it's the sun. It doesn't get extremely hot here, but just the feeling of the UV light here is so intense. I can get sunburned within 15 minutes. So I try not to go out in the afternoon just because the sun is so harsh. When I go out, I wear a wide brimmed hat. I put on sunblock. The number two thing that makes it really challenging to be out in the afternoon is when you're walking down these dusty roads. It's all dirt roads around here. There's not many paved roads. And these cars and motorcycles drive by and they kick up dust. And I've been here 5 years and I don't think I've been clean for 5 years. I've just succumbed to it. Every time I go out, you're walking around, you get hot. The dust kicks up, it sticks to your skin. I'm just used to it at this point. Okay, so that's the afternoon. Now, if you go out in the evening, I prefer to go out in the evening, but the main challenges I face in the evening is the darkness. It's so dark when you go out. I mean, think of like a village inside a jungle. There's no public lighting. There's no street lights. You get a little bit of ambient light from some of the houses that have electricity. Not all houses around here have electricity. Depending on where you live, houses that have electricity are going to be like from 50% down to maybe 10%. So sometimes there's a little bit of ambient light from houses. On wider dirt roads, there will be light, the headlights from the cars. And it's really hard to walk at night on these main thoroughways for cars because when you're walking, the headlights blast right into your eyes and it blinds you, and it's so dark out there. And so that makes it hard to see the roads. And the roads are not smooth, paved concrete. The roads. So what makes it hard about being so dark is the roads. The roads are not smooth, heavenly, paved concrete roads. No, there's rocks, potholes, garbage. There might be a piece of wood with nails sticking out. And funny enough, I think Africans have really good eyesight because or maybe it's me because I grew up in a suburb and I grew up in a developed country with street lights. So I never had to walk around in the pitch dark as a child. But I think when you grow up here, your eyesight gets really good. There's a lot of times where I feel I need a flashlight, and then I'll see the locals here, they're just fine without one. And then the second thing that I have to battle when I go out at night, it depends on the place where I am. Usually when I'm closer to a water or a swamp or a lake, is mosquitoes. And I find that as long as I'm not standing in one place, I'm okay. But if you stand in one place or sit down, they just converge on you, man. And they won't leave you alone. So that's just a brief summary of the environmental challenges. So what are the people like? Well, the first thing you'll notice or experience is going out as a foreigner. People here stare, and they don't just stare. I think it's in the culture, but in the West, for example, we consider it like impolite to stare too much. But here it's like full range staring, not ashamed, just going to stand there and look at you. You're a show, and I'm going to watch you walk by. They'll watch you. They'll talk about you with their friends. Girls stare at you. Guys stare at you. Adults stare at you. Babies will stare at you. Elders and soldiers, they'll all stare at you. So if you don't like getting stared at, don't come to Africa. Okay, so how do the people behave? Well, I'd say in general, people here are pretty polite in my experience. I get the sense that they feel a little intimidated or shy, but a lot of people are extroverted and they'll say hello. They usually greet me in English because they think I don't speak the local language, which I don't, but I do know the greetings in some simple Luganda. Luganda is the local language here in central Uganda. Now, usually when I do greet them in their local language, for example, in the evening, I'll say wasibiocha, which means good evening. And then they laugh and they get a big kick out of that. And I think it makes them feel more comfortable. So I like that I can at least greet them in their own language and I can have a small, simple conversation with them. I'd say in my personal experiences, about 85%, 80 to 85% of the people I come across are friendly. So the people that I like most to come across here are friendly adults and young adults and children with manners. And some children, and this is really sweet, some children and some young adults, like young teenagers, 12, 13, 14, sometimes when I walk by, they'll get down on their knees and greet me. And that's kind of an old school traditional way to greet your elders. And I really like that. I really think that's very graceful and a beautiful part of the culture. People I generally don't like to come across are large groups of children, like 10 or more children, because they tend to band together and make a big deal about the Muzungu walking by. Makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. Next, and this typically is common at night, is coming across drunk men, and there's a lot of them around. They'll stop, they'll monopolize the conversation, and then they'll be speaking nonsensical babble. And I've just learned to be friendly, firm, and quick, and just, acknowledge them and try to move on as fast as possible. That's how I deal with drunk guys. Then there's fake friends, and this is usually guys in their 20s. They'll come up to me, they'll say, "Hey man, I've seen you around, what's your name?" And they'll try to become a friend, but their real ulterior motive is 2 weeks down the line, after we've been texting for a couple weeks, they'll be like, "Hey man, I'm down on my money right now. Can you send me $10? Or they'll present me with what they think is the most novel and supreme greatest business idea that a human being has ever come up with. And if they could start this business, we'll all become millionaires, but I need your capital, Ryan. I need you to invest in my business." So fake friends, I don't like to come across them. The next is the boda driver. So what does that mean? A boda driver is a guy who uses a motorcycle and he gives people rides on the motorcycle to places you want to go, places in the village. And these guys are always driving around. You can always flag one down, but they have what they call stations here. And they're these little stops in the village, every few kilometers or so. And a group of boda guys, like you'll see anywhere from 5 to 15 of them. They're just sitting on their motorcycles on the side of the road at this stage. Now, when I'm walking past these boda guys, they'll all just stare me down, just waiting to crack stupid jokes. Usually I present myself pretty confidently. I greet them in their local language, and they're pretty respectful. But these boda guys are known to be pretty gossipy, spread rumors and lies. They're very jealous, territorial. And if I don't know how much it costs to go someplace, they'll charge me 3-4 times what it should cost. So I'm usually polite with them, but I keep a respectful, friendly distance. Now, all these people that I've mentioned that I really don't like to meet when I go out, which again was large groups of young children, drunk guys, fake friends, and groups of boda drivers, it can really depend on your mood. Now, don't think in the mindset of, "Oh, I'm a tourist in Africa," because if you're just a tourist, you kind of have your rose-tinted glasses on, and I can't really respect your opinion. But if you live here, you're here day in and day out. It's just going to be like living in your home country. You're going to have good days and bad days and really shitty days. And sometimes when you're having a really, really bad day, you got some bad news, or something's going on in your personal life and you're just really irritated about it, or angry, or upset, or depressed, you don't feel like having a large band of 20 children follow you and heckle you and call you Muzungu. You don't feel like talking to a drunk guy. You don't feel like giving who you know is going to be a fake friend who's going to ask you for money in 2 weeks. You don't feel like even giving him 3 seconds of your time. So that's something tough. And another thing is, if you feel lonely, if you feel socially isolated here, when you have those experiences, they actually make you feel more socially isolated. So those are some of the negatives of coming across these kinds of people. So like, what do I see when I go outside? What kind of businesses, what kind of shops do I see? Well, things are built very rudimentarily here. Most of the structures are built with mud brick, which is, there's plenty of mud around here. There's lots of dirt and rain and water. So that's the simplest thing. No, they don't build a lot of structures here with wood like we do in the West. So a building will either be built out of mud brick and the walls will be plastered, or it'll be crudely built out of pieces of wood that look like the structure was built by an 8-year-old, like literally built by an 8-year-old. The boards will be crooked, the nails will be sticking out, there will be spaces between the boards, no insulation, no floor. Yeah, very rudimentary. You'll see those kinds of structures. And then another thing is these cargo containers. They'll just set them down and set up a shop inside of one. So those are the 3 main structures that I see. And what kind of businesses do I see? So I'll call these like stationary businesses or shops. And those are mostly what I see are churches. There's a shit ton of churches around here. The biggest one being the born again Christians. I see a lot of small clinics, little individual, privately owned health clinics. A lot of them cater to the basic diseases here, which are mostly malaria, typhoid, HIV, pregnant women, and then other basic simple illnesses. I see a lot of what I call box shops. So this is like a very small room. It might be 10 feet by 10 feet. Okay, so what kind of businesses do I see the most in these kinds of shops? I see vegetable vendors, secondhand clothes shops, ladies' hair salons. There's so many of those. Wig shops, pharmacies. I see a ton of pharmacies here. Clinics and electronics. Okay, the next kind of vendors I see, they don't even have a structure to work out of. They don't even have a room to work out of. And it's probably because they don't have enough money. What they do is they simply lay out a large blanket or plastic sheet and they put what they're selling right on that. So, or they'll have like a little grill. So what I see for those businesses, commonly are people who sell vegetables, secondhand shoes. I see a lot of that. There's ladies that sit on the side of the road with just a little grill and they roast corn over charcoal. And then I see ladies selling fried fish from the lake. The most popular fish I see them sell is a fish called ngege, which I don't know what that is in English, but it comes from Lake Victoria. And the third class of vendors I see are what I call moving vendors. These are people who walk with their products. So they'll be walking or riding a bicycle and sometimes a motorcycle. And they'll walk or ride their motorcycle all through the villages, down all the roads. And what I see them selling mostly is, again, secondhand clothes, plastic items. So like one vendor will just sell clothes. He'll just have a big rack of clothes and he'll be walking down the road with this big rack of clothes. Or another vendor will be walking down the road with just like all these Tupperware and basins and large plastic items like chairs, maybe even tables. And he'll just have them stacked on his shoulders, hanging down like from some kind of apparatus. Hey guys, if you've enjoyed this video, feel free to leave me a super thanks. Also, I have a lot of archived videos and videos about my personal life in Africa on my Patreon, so check that out. Now, something that you'll see a lot of here is animals. Every time I go out, and I think this is in order of frequency that I see them, I see chickens. The second most I see here is village dogs. So there's no like humane society here. There's no initiative to spay and neuter dogs. And I see a lot of just stray dogs, and they're not like they are. Obviously, dogs are domesticated, but these dogs are kind of feral. They're afraid of people. Sometimes I try to befriend them, but they've just had too many negative experiences with the people here. The people here generally are very cruel and unloving towards dogs. They'll throw rocks at them, and they just see them as a nuisance, and it's really sad. Next would be goats. I see goats all the time. I'll see goats in groups of anywhere from 5 to maybe 30 goats, and usually there will be a guy supervising, watching the goats, bringing them from place to place. Next is cows. I'll see like a herd of cows, not super large herds, but anywhere from like 5 to 15 cows, just ambling down the road. And I like it. You know, I grew up in the suburbs of the United States, and I never saw farm animals and wild animals running around. But here it's just anything goes. They don't seem to have zoning laws. So yeah, I see a lot of domestic animals, and then next, wild animals. The national bird of Uganda, and the bird that you see on the flag of Uganda, is called the gray-crowned crane. And I don't see them often, but I hear them every day, and they make a very unique sound. And when I first came to Uganda, I actually thought that the sound that they make, I thought it was monkeys. Another bird I see quite frequently here is called a marabou stork. It's this huge stork. I mean, they're gigantic. They come up to like my lower chest area. That's how tall they are. They have an enormous wingspan of like 3 men wide. I'll put a photo here. I asked my local friends here, why don't you eat storks? I mean, you guys love chicken. Why not just go to the next bigger thing, which is a stork? And they're like, oh, there's some kind of stigma associated with them. They eat corpses. I think they're carnivores. So another one I see here are cane rats. They're these huge rats, like the size of dogs. The first time I saw one, I was just like bewildered. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was maybe an African fox. It just was like this little black dog just running towards me with these bright eyes, and then it darted off into the bushes. My dogs were hunting it and chasing it. I see lizards of all sizes, from small to enormous. I saw a lizard once that was the size of one of those big monitor lizards, and my dogs chased that one too. I couldn't believe how fast those things can run. And it was like zigzagging through some tall grass, and my dogs had no chance. That thing was so fast and sneaky. It got away, thankfully, because I don't know who would have won that battle between the dogs and the huge monitor-like lizard. And then I see monkeys, and I love it. I absolutely love it, because you never see wild monkeys in the United States. One day I was walking through a forest area near Lake Victoria, and up in the trees I saw a band of about 20 monkeys, and they were all looking down at me, watching me. And I just looked up, and I watched and gazed at them for probably 20 minutes, and they were watching me. They were kind of run from branch to branch and then look down and squawk at each other. They were like communicating with each other. And after I watched them for a while, I just continued down the trail for probably half a kilometer, and there was a canopy above me, and they followed me for a good half kilometer as I walked down the trail. They would, in the canopy, they would run ahead of me, stop, watch me walk by, squawk at each other, look at me again. They're really interesting and intriguing animals. They tend to stay away from people. Again, the people here treat the monkeys the same way they treat dogs. I'll see people throwing rocks at the monkeys. And it's so sad. It's really sad. All right, insects. The most common insects I see here are ants. Ants, I'll see droves of ants. They'll be like maybe 2 feet wide, and they'll just be marching through a trail by the thousands, probably even tens of thousands. I see ant hills all over the place. These really tall ant hills, taller than me. They'll be like these ant hills will be anywhere from like 4 to 8, even 10 feet tall. Ants are okay, but the ones I have problem with are what they call fire ants, or here they call them safari ants. And it can be tricky. You can be walking down a road or a trail at night, and you'll step into a patch of fire ants, and they'll run up your leg, into your pants, your underwear. I was walking one night, and I think I stepped into a patch of these fire ants, and they ran up my leg, into my underwear, up my back. I think they were even in the trees, and they came down and descended on my head. And I was like a crazy man. I mean, they were stinging me. You can feel each sting. Luckily it was nighttime. I had to take all my clothes off and just shoo them, get them off my body. Fortunately, I was in an isolated area, but I'm pretty sure if anybody that night had seen a Muzungu flailing around, undressing, they probably would have called the village chief to come and put me down and cook me in an African stew.